Hi folks, welcome to Bear Mountain today. One of the things that we've had trouble with over the last several years has been the vitality of our ranunculus crop. Matter of fact, for the last couple of years, it's really hit us pretty hard. We've had a lot of problems, and we show you some pictures after this little intro here of what it is we've been through and what it is we're doing this year to try to make things a little different. So let's get started and talking about it. In the past, what we've had trouble with in the ranunculus is we'd put them in the ground. We'd do a normal pre-sprout first, backing up. We would do it, last year we did it in trays, and then we planted them as soon as we saw white tips. And what we had happen last year is the plants would look good until right about now. And what we would notice starting to happen is that the plants would begin to fail to thrive. And eventually the first things we'd start to see would be yellowing of the leaves, and then the bottom leaves would end up getting kind of crusty brown and basically desiccating out. And the plant would lose its vitality, and when you pull a plant up, you'd find that the roots were half rotted off or mostly rotted off. And we thought there's a number of different things going on. First, we thought it was symphylans. We're attacking the roots and eating the roots, because we did see symphylans in the soil. Then we thought, okay, not every place had symphylans, and we were getting the same problem. And then we thought, okay, it must be a form of a pathogenic fungus in the soil attacking the roots. And but then we would put other things in after them, such as a brassica like stock or something like that, and it would just do fine. So a number of things, there's all kinds of theories going on out there, like maybe the vitality of the corms aren't as good as they used to be. We've been raising ranunculus and buying new corms every year, but we've been doing this is probably our 15th year. And but the last three have been very difficult for us to get a decent crop out of them. And then we kind of started looking at soil biology, trying to learn a bit more about things, about what's going on. The biggest thing that popped out at us was that our soil has a definite compaction layer. Even though we're no-till, this area where we have built this hoop house here was graded off and cleared off, and it used heavy equipment to do that. And there is a compaction layer in here that's roughly about 12 inches down. It's better than it was. When we first started, that compaction layer was maybe about 6 inches down. And we haven't tilled in here. We used the broad fork on it once last year, and this year we did nothing other than just keep plants coming in and trying to keep organic material up. That was our starting point. Then we started exploring things with Korean natural farming, and to a lesser degree Jadam, which is a kind of an offshoot of Korean natural farming, but its focus was soil biology. Started studying a lot about Elaine Ingham and her soil food web techniques of building soil biology, and it got us to thinking that part of our problem is maybe that our soil was going anaerobic. With a compaction layer here, and we typically have a very high water table, we kind of began to get the idea that what was happening in the wintertime, when our water table would definitely come up in December and January, that we were getting damage to the roots. And then once that damage started, then opportunistic things like funguses and bacterial infections, and then maybe ultimately even, you can see some phyllins and stuff eating on the damaged, decomposing roots. And that's where we kind of came up with the idea, okay, how do we fight that? And one of the things that Korean natural farming has to help aerate soil is to get biology into it. And that's the same theory with Elaine Ingham's soil food web, is getting good biology into the soil to start to aerate it, start to form those soil aggregates, instead of just having roughly just, silt and soil packing on each other. Because that was part of our problem in here. When we first started, organic material level was very low. So the soil, with its lack of aeration in it, lack of good aggregation in it, that's what we really decided to start working on. And the first thing we did with KNF is we came in and we applied LAB, which we have a couple of videos on how we made that, in combination with diluted seawater for minerals. It's a solution they call fermented seawater, which is basically allowing LAB to culture in a seawater mixture. Diluted seawater, about 30 parts of fresh water to 1 part seawater or sea salt. So it's very diluted. And we started applying that, particularly in this tunnel. And we've done 2 applications in here on the Ranunculus. And these were smaller corms to begin with. These were 3-5 corms. But what we have noticed is that we're now the 9th of January and we're not seeing the kind of damage we saw last year. So I think that's a positive. So in this bed, then we applied fermented seawater right after planting, and then again a month later. And we're going to do 1 more this month before we switch over and start supplementing with water-soluble calcium phosphate to help the plants switch over into the blooming side of things. What we see is the plants look more vigorous. Again, these were 3-5s. They were small corms. But they look relatively healthy, and they seem to be doing okay. Our soil compaction now with the application of these things has moved from 6 inches of compaction layer now is down closer to 12. So we're getting better aeration in the top 12 inches than we've had in the past, and I think that has enabled these plants to really thrive. Ranunculus, I think, are really sensitive to soil compaction, and I think that was part of our root cause. We have been working with the KNF solutions a little longer in our other tunnel, so we'll walk over there and take a look at those guys and see how they're progressing. Just a spoiler alert, they look even better than these guys. Okay, here we are in our hoop house where we have been applying the KNF solutions in the soil for a longer period of time. In the previous rotation through here, we had tulips last year, and then celosia, and then now we've moved to these guys for this year. Now, the thing to note about that, this is a different variety. This group right here is Amidine Pastel Mix. And what we have noticed is that the major thing that's starting to go on here is that initially the plants started out with kind of skinny stems. And what we had last year is we did not get the thicker stems that are developing on the newer leaves as the plant's beginning to stretch out. The other thing we noticed this year is that we now have multiple, basically, if you want to call them little cormlets, or that's not the right term, but I guess growing points, where in the past maybe we'd only have 1. This plant, for example, has 2. We have some of them that are as vigorous where they have up to 3 multiples, like in this one. And then again, some of the newer growth is much more vigorous, bigger stems. So the plant is getting minerals, and that was one of the things that why we went with the fermented seawater instead of the straight Lactobacillus, the LAB solution in the wintertime, because we wanted to get minerals into the plant, because we knew we had problems with our soil biology, and that we thought would help reinvigorate the plant. This group right here are white picotees, labels. They were 3-5 corms, just like over in the other tunnel, but these guys are quite vigorous. I mean, look at the leaves, they're as big as my hand, and they're getting nice thick stems on them. So these guys are gonna be much more vigorous. They still got at least another probably month and a half of vegetative growth to go through here. So these guys are gonna be significantly larger than last year. Now, the other thing that we changed this year, and we'll put a link to the video where we had our new method for pre-sprouting ranunculus, is we started these guys in 72 trays, large plug, and so we got them basically coming up green as a plant, and then when we put them in, they were actual plants that had sprouted instead of just a corm that maybe showed a little bit of root and a little bit of white. So these guys had already been growing in sunlight for a week or two before they actually went in the ground, which I think made a much more stronger plant to start with. Now, the other thing that we did at planting time is we used a K&F solution they call seed enhancing solution, which is basically a couple of biostimulants of fermented plant juice and oriental herbal nutrient and some brown rice vinegar in very, very dilute amounts. And what that does is that help the plant just get a good start. And then, like I said, then we treated them with the fermented seawater twice, and this is where we are today. These guys look, for January, this is some of the better stuff we've had in years. So the reason why I'm telling you this stuff today is not so much that you got to go do K&F and all that kind of stuff. The key to it is that we've been working on getting the biology back into the soil itself, and that getting that compaction layer out, however you do it, and get these soil aggregates back so you get air down into the root zone, I think is the key to a lot of the problems that we've been having in terms of just failure to thrive. So, I mean, there's many different ways to do that. You can use regular compost teas, aerated compost teas. They help tremendously as well. So there's different ways to attack the problem, but the problem is an anaerobic environment that for plant roots, it's bad. And these ranunculus are very sensitive to things like calcium salts or salts in solution that are too much.
Fertilizers that have
fertilizers are technically salts, like Epsom salts is magnesium sulfate.
And that was bad for him one year.
And those types of things that you apply that build up in the soil could have a negative effect on it, but they also have a negative effect on soil aggregation, and ultimately the biology becomes damaged such that you're not getting that good aeration. The other advantage that we've had with this year, in the past we've had to irrigate, even in the tunnel, at least once a month from planting. And I'll tell you, when we put these in, we irrigated them good, and I've watered them once in the middle of December, and I'm not really sure I really needed to, and they're still got plenty of moisture. I put my finger down an inch and it feels moist. You can even see moisture as well as volunteer sweet peas growing. But there's plenty of roots, and they're thriving. So that's the other advantage, is a well-balanced soil that has good aeration in it and good organic material can hold a lot of water. So
since they're so much bigger, do you think they'll bloom faster?
No, not really, because I think mostly the bloom is really set by the day length. So until we start approaching 12 hours a day length, which is about mid-March, that may start to show bud, maybe depending on temperature. That can move it kind of like one way or the other, a week or so. But basically, it's right around that time they bloom.
It's almost predictable, March 20th.
Yeah, for us, it's always been right around the 25th of March that they bloom. But what I think we will get out of these guys this year is if the plants remain healthy and everything works out, we should get good, strong stems and some
nice heads
on them.
Nice bloom heads.
Because the plants are healthy.
But we're also facing a week of snow and some very cold temperatures, so
well, not as cold as you'd think. Actually, it's kind of like
we're gonna have to cover them.
We'll have to cover them, yeah. but it's not going to be like sub-zero.
No,
So
but
it's not like we're not getting Minnesota cold or North Dakota
no,
cold.
but
This is like, Oregon cold. It's just
we've
kind of
had a
worse season.
mild winter so far, and that
Yes.
might also be helping that these are looking fairly good.
Yeah, that could be. But we had a mild winter last year
And
too,
they still
and they
died.
still died on us. So
This doesn't mean that we know for sure what's
no.
going on with our ranunculus. It's just another thing that we're doing to hopefully fix it.
Yeah,
It's
we're
balance.
probably jinxing this whole thing
Yeah,
by
I know.
putting this out here, and then but
That's my thought is let's not film it. We're ruining them.
but the key to the point, getting back to it, the key to it is an anaerobic state in your soil that can be caused by various issues of compaction. It may look great right on the surface, but when you get down into the root zone of, the roots on these guys, even though they're shallow, will probably still go down, 10, 12 inch, searching for things. Anaerobic soils also damage the fungal life in there. There is good fungus as well as pathogenic fungus. There's good bacteria as well as pathogenic bacteria. And having aeration in there keeps the things balanced. So they all play a role, but you don't want one going too far the other way. So I think that's the key to get out of this. But the last thing we're going to do is we'll just show you on the end how we make fermented seawater. It's really easy, and we apply it just as a foliar feed, and that's it. Okay, so we're going to make fermented seawater. Now, fermented seawater is using the term fermented is a little bit outside of what people normally think. Normally when people hear fermented, they think, oh, like an alcoholic beverage, or beer is fermented and wine is fermented, and that. In a sense, we are using fermentation because we're using lactobacillus, and we're also using FPJ, which is saturated in sugar, which is going to help feed the LAB, which is going to help also keep in solution of the other enzymes and growth things that came with our comfrey FPJ. And then we're adding sea salt for minerals. So really what we're doing here is we're culturing lactobacillus to make a more saturated solution in 1 gallon of water. So these ratios that we're going to be adding to it is the idea is this is the food plus some enzymes. This is what we're culturing is the lactobacillus. And the sea salt diluted down is going to provide minerals and things that ultimately will go to the plant. So when we apply these on the ranunculus beds, what we're applying is really a lactobacillus cultured thing that has plant enzymes and growth hormones and other things available to it, plus a good base of minerals. So how do we make it? The ratios are important. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is, starting with sea salt, is we want to get this diluted to 1 part of the salt per 30 parts of the water. What this boils down to, this is a fine grained sea salt made only in the purest places, Kirkland. Actually, you can use any sea salt that's a quality sea salt that has not been processed, and that it has, most of these sea salts have a good wide range of minerals available to them. You can also use, to some degree, Himalayan salt. It would kind of give you the same because this is based on ancient seabeds anyway, or Redmond salt, or whatever salt that makes sense to you. To get a dilution in a gallon for 1 part of this per 30 of this, it boils down to really simple on this fine grained stuff. It's either 4.5 grams, which really in this grain of salt equates to 3/4 of a teaspoon. So we'll just put 3/4 of a teaspoon. And I took a little bit of water out of here just to do a little bit of a premix to make certain that when we put it in, this is a 1/4 teaspoon, by the way, so I'm doing 3 of these guys. And that's it. And so I'm just going to kind of, this is kind of lukewarm water. I'm just going to kind of let it dissolve a little bit. And while that's dissolving in this water, we'll set that aside for a second. Then we'll work on the other components. Okay, the food and the enzymes, the FPJ portion is what we're doing with that is we're going to use about 2.5 teaspoons of this. Now what that means is it's really a dilution rate of about 1 to 700. Okay, so a teaspoon is typically about 5 mil. And we're going to use 2.5 of these guys. So we'll put that in. We keep our FPJ stored in a little refrigerator outside. So it's kept cool, but it's a plant extracts that have been osmotically extracted with brown sugar. And so there's a fair amount of brown sugar in this. So we'll put in 2.5 teaspoons.
Which plant material did we make?
This is out of comfrey. You can use an FPJ when you're making that, and I believe we have a video on that. You can use basically just about any plant that isn't poisonous and that has a good growth tip on it.
Blackberry.
You know, it's actively growing. We use blackberry, grape, and comfrey. What you do is you harvest those growth tips in the morning before the sun hits it, and then you chop them up and you mix them on a 1-to-1 ratio with brown sugar, and over a period of about 7 days, most of the liquid is extracted out of that osmotically. So that's what we got going here. There's 2.5 of that. Now that's the food source. Just kind of getting it all off my teaspoon here. Okay. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to put in our LAB, which is, believe it or not, isn't much per gallon. We're going to put in 1 teaspoon, which is 5 mil. And this was done, we store this in the fridge. We have 2 videos on making LAB. I'll put a link up to there. You can take a look at those, how we did that. But this is basically the material. 1 good teaspoon. Let me make sure I get a nice full teaspoon. This is all we're adding to inoculate this. And this guy will go back out to the fridge. Now at this point, our salt water is kind of made up. So we're going to pour that in. Now what I do, just as a final thing, I've got a, I can find it here. You know, you can never find things around your house. Anyway, I'll use my wood spoon, the handle of a wood spoon, and I'm just going to lightly agitate this to make sure that all the salt got dissolved in the water and everything is evenly mixed. Now, what you'll notice on this, since this is at the point of mixing it up, is it's a nice light amber, mostly clear look to it. And what we're going to be looking for after about 24 to 36 hours, we tend to let ours go close to 36 hours. But you could use it probably as soon as 24. You're going to notice that this is going to cloud up. And once it's clouded up, that means that the lactobacillus has really populated the entire thing. You want to use it all at that point. This isn't something to store. So this is a solution you make up. You let the lactobacillus culture in this thing, and then you use it as is. You don't dilute it. You spray it on your soil as a treatment or on the leaves of the plants as a treatment. Gets the minerals to the plant, enzymes to the plant. Lactobacillus helps soil loosening and just basically it's a really good solution to get a biostimulation to your plant and get minerals to it. And this is what we use. Last thing we do is we just put the paper towel over the top, secure the rubber band. I can do this right. Let me do this right. So we put the paper towel on top, and that's just to keep anything from falling into it or flying into it or whatever it is. Just going to put it out in our pantry in a dark place. Kind of keep it away from light. It's the best thing to do. Give it just let it sit for 24 hours to 36, and then apply it. And that's it. That's what we did in terms of helping our ranunculus that we showed. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them down at the bottom of the video. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. We do appreciate that. And so we just wanted to share with you how we were doing this and how it seems to be a positive effect on the ranunculus at this point. I want to thank you guys for watching, and you all have a good day.